Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending the July 31st, 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for the town of Merrimack. The next meeting will be August 28th. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a little bit of an ear infection tonight, so if I sound like I'm a little off, that's why. So please bear with me. Going to read in the preamble. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will proceed with the petition in the order that they have been listed on the agenda unless the board deems it appropriate to take a petition out of order. State law and local ordinances are set out that must be met in order for the board to grant a request. The minimum requirements are outlined in the form provided by the Community Development Office, and the petitioner should proceed with this format to provide adequate justification for the board to grant the request. The chair will open the meeting to hear testimony either for or against all discussion will be between the speaker and the board. Please be respectful of all and in the interest of time, refrain from repeating your previous testimony. No new documentation will be accepted by the board for consideration this evening, but the board reserves the right to ask for additional testimony at any time. After hearing the facts from all parties regarding a petition, the chairman will close the public hearing and the board will deliberate and vote on the request before moving on to the next petition. Please turn off all cell phones. This evening, Drew Duffy and Ben Niles. Well, actually, we're going to welcome Ben. He's new to the board. But Drew and Ben will be sitting in for Rich and Lynn, who are absent this evening. A couple of housekeeping items. When the petition is called, please come on down. Please sign in on the clipboard, as well as make sure that the light on the microphone is bright green. So make sure you push the button and it's bright green before you speak. First petition. Sorry. I forgot. Got to swear everybody in. That's what happens when you miss one meeting. All right. Anybody who plans on speaking this evening, could you please rise? Plan on speaking at all for or against petition? Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat. Thank you. The first petition is Pam and Carl Belmonte petitioners' request for rehearing regarding case number 2019-17, in which the board granted variances under section 3.02A of the zoning ordinance to permit a two-lot subdivision with one lot having 86,505 square feet of continuous non-wetland area and the second lot having 65,046 square feet of continuous non-wetland area, whereas 100,000 square feet is required. The parcel is located at 85 Woodward Road in the R Residential by map and Aquifer Conservation District's tax map 7A lot 007. This is a request for rehearing from a petition that was heard in last month's meeting. Drew, Rod, and Kathy are the only sitting members here tonight that were at the June meeting. They'll be discussing the petition. So I'll turn it over to you folks to have your conversation. Make sure your mics are on.
Mics on. We've heard considerable testimony on this issue, and we have
Is your mic?
my mic is on. Yeah, my mic's on. It's just probably not close enough to my face.
Speaking softly.
Right. We've heard considerable testimony about this, and in reading the conclusion of the letter that we got from Mr. Shepherd is that the zoning board, it says, the zoning board never discussed the impact of granting the variance would have on surrounding property values. There was testimony, however, that testimony, in my opinion, was an opinion and not a fact. So I'm sure a real estate person could come in here and say, yes, it's going to affect. Another person could come in and say, no, it's not going to affect. The difference between opinions and facts. So with that in mind, I am really not ready to take any further testimony than the the copious testimony we've already had on this item.
I agree with that, in reading this, that.
His mic is on too, it's
Yes,
just not
my
close
mic
enough
is
to
on,
his
yeah,
face.
all right. Yes, I agree with that. This would be our third time with this. They've had two chances, and again, the real estate agent came in, and you could get a real estate agent coming in with an opinion in any direction. So I tend to decline a third rehearing.
I
Anything?
agree.
You agree? Okay. Therefore, time for a motion. I am going to bring forward a motion to deny the request for rehearing regarding case number 2019-19, in which the board granted variances under section 3.02A of the zoning ordinance to permit a two-lot subdivision with one lot having 86,505 square feet of contiguous non-wetland area, and the second lot having 65,046 square feet of contiguous not wetland area, whereas 100,000 feet is required. The parcel is located at 85 Woodward Road in the R1 Residential by Map and Aquifer Conservation District's Tax Map 7A Lot 007.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor of denying the request for rehearing, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? And so it's 3-0-2. Thank you. Next petition. Curtis M. Wheeler Jr. This petition's actually going to be a continuance to the August 28th meeting. I'm going to read it in and we'll just do a quick vote.
Right.
Curtis M. Wheeler Jr., petitioner owner, variance under section 2.02.1.C.2.2.C of the zoning ordinance to permit a detached accessory dwelling ADU with 1,078 square feet, whereas a maximum 1,000 square feet is permitted under the section 2.02.C.2.D to permit a detached ADU on a lot comprised of less than 125% of the minimum lot area required by section 3.02.A, Table 1. The parcel is located at 5 Lakeside Drive in the R2 Residential District, Tax Map 6A-1, Lot 153, case number 2019-16. And this is a continuance to the August 28th meeting. So I need a motion to continue. All right. Do I need a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Drew, seconded by Kathy. All in favor of continuance to August, say aye. Aye. All against? Abstain? All right, 5-0. Sir. Yep. So this also serves as a public notice that this petition for Curtis M. Wheeler regarding the ADU, this is the public notice that it has been moved to the Wednesday, August 28th meeting. The next petition has actually been withdrawn. I don't need to read that in. And now that brings us to Ted Jarvis, petitioner and GTO NH LLC owner, variance under section 17.08 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 230 square foot temporary sign whereas a maximum 32 square feet is permitted, and to permit the display of the sign for longer than 30 days. The parcel is located at 515 DW Highway in the R4 Residential Aquifer Conservation District, Town Center Overlay, Elderly Housing Overlay, and Planned Residential Development Overlay Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, Tax Map 5D-2, Lot C002, case number 2019-18. Mr. Jarvis, are you here? Come on down. Yep, just make sure you sign in.
Mr. Chairman, you may want to consider it, if it's agreeable to the applicant, to combine the presentations for number 6 and 7. They're two separate variances, but they're from the same sections of the ordinance.
I'd like to vote on them separately, though.
Just to combine the presentation, I think, would be.
Yeah, to make it time, that'd be fine. Lights bright green? All right, tell us what we're looking at.
So my client has the parcel there on DW Highway, and that's quite a bit of.
Could you actually try it again or move the mic up closer to you?
All right, there we go. How's that?
Yep.
Better? All right. My client has the parcel there off of DW Highway that has quite a bit of vacancy in that they're working on redeveloping that whole property to get more tenants into that space. And what they're requesting to do is to put up a temporary signage up on the pylon, the existing pylon sign that's there for lease for the property, and also another sign up on the clock tower. Because it's so far away from the road and the cars going by at the rate of speed that they are, that's why we're putting a larger one, looking to put a larger one up on that clock tower so that people know that there is available space in there. We can work very diligently to get that leased out and get the property cleaned up much better over, the time frame. So that's what we're looking at, simple banners to be up there for lease.
Okay, excellent. There's the 5 criteria. We could just go through those,
Yep.
please? Thanks.
So on the first granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, because with respect, it's a temporary signage, and the basic objective is, of the ordinance is to avoid visual clutter and over-obtrusive signage that would alter the character of the neighborhood. And we don't believe we would be doing that, because the client is very, to the point, it's clean, it's going to be adhered right to the building itself in a very professional manner, and in the spirit of the ordinance being observed. We feel that we meet that, because again, it's not overly obtrusive with the size of the signage we're looking, given the fact the size of the strip mall that's in there. So I don't think I'm taking too much advantage there on that. The variance criteria on the temporary signage, granting the variance, we believe would do substantial justice, because.
Hold on.
What's that?
So, okay.
On 3?
So, yeah.
What did I do?
We're trying to stop after after each one in case there's any questions.
Okay,
That-
sorry.
It's okay.
I apologize.
So granting the variance, any questions regarding that? No. Okay, and kind of hit spirit of the ordinance. I think you got that one. Any questions on that? All right, so let's go to.
3?
Yeah, number 3, granting the variance,
All
for
right.
justice.
So we believe that the substantial justice would be done in the approval of the signage to allow the redevelopment and the now dated facility that's there, with the significant vacancy that's in there in the commercial space, and the public interest would be successful redevelopment of the vacant building and filling up the empty retail and commercial spaces definitely outweighs the installation of these 2 signage, obviously, to take care of that property. And
Any questions on substantial justice? Okay. Property values.
okay, so the redevelopment of this site would definitely increase, not diminish any property values in the surrounding areas. The site now contains, like I say, a significant vacancy, and redevelopment of the site will revitalize and bring service to the area, and the signs would let the public know, including those who might be interested in purchasing real estate in the area, know that an investment is being made for the future of this neighborhood. And additionally, the design of the signs is tasteful and consistent with our application and desire to bring much aesthetic improvement to that parcel.
Questions on diminish?
Drove by the site.
Yes, sir.
I drove by the site this morning,
Yes, sir.
and the sign by the DW Highway
Yes, sir.
has a floating for rent sign. Is that the one you were proposing to put there?
Correct.
So you're assuming our full support?
If I can bring the board up to speed on this request is actually a result of an enforcement action. There were 3 temporary signs on the site, the one on the pylon sign, the one on the clock tower, and there was a 3rd that was on stakes right up against the road, up against the guardrail. Our department contacted the property owner, let them know they were in violation of the ordinance. They removed the 3rd sign, and they're requesting the ability to maintain the temporary signage that they had put up illegally per this variance. If they're unsuccessful with this variance, then they'll have to remove those signs.
Anything else, Ben? Unnecessary hardship?
So no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provisions and the specific application of that provision to the property, because the general purpose of the ordinance is to ensure that there is no proliferation of oversized signage throughout the town. Here, only 2 signs are being proposed at one location, like I say, at the existing pylon, and the other location at the clock tower, which is set way back from the main road. This parcel does present a unique situation because of its large retail and commercial lot, which contains a very large building and, again, has suffered for long-term high vacancy. This signage is necessary to obtain interest to the project so that the now vacant portions of the plaza and other spaces can be filled and benefit the residents of the town.
And then proposed use?
The proposed use is reasonable because the use is reasonable because it requests only 2 signs visible from the main road, DW Highway, which abuts the parcel. Additionally, there are larger, though they are larger than normal allowed, the signs serve as an opportunity to fill the spaces that would otherwise remain vacant, and this plaza would continue to struggle. And finally, as noted above, the signage would be placed on the property outside the necessary setbacks and will be installed that will be aesthetically pleasing.
Any questions on hardship? All right, any questions from the board at all before I open the public hearing? Drew? Is there anybody that'd like to speak for this petition? Is there anybody that'd like to speak against this petition? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Discussion with the board. We're going to vote on these one at a time. There are 2 different signs. One is for the 230, the first one we're looking at is the 230-foot, square foot temporary sign, which is probably the one that is going to be on the tower.
Correct.
And then
Right.
the other one is the floating sign, and that I'll read in.
The
but-
clock tower.
Yeah. the clock tower.
Actually, it's the reverse. The clock tower is the larger of the signs.
Really?
The smaller one is the one that's going to be on the freestanding
Thank you.
sign.
Okay.
And you will need to read the second one into the record before you vote on it.
Yeah, oh, definitely, got it. So, regarding the first petition for the 230 square foot sign, is there any comments, questions?
I don't like to see, retail that's undeveloped, so if this can help get that retail developed, let's get some business going in Merrimack.
Ben?
I agree with her comments, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I know that plaza has been busier at times.
Yes, it
So
has been.
definitely lost some tenants, so, do I have a motion? Rod?
I make a motion that we grant Ted Jarvis petitioner and GTNH LLC owner variance under section 17.08 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 230 square foot temporary sign, whereas a maximum of 32 square feet is permitted, and to permit the display of the sign for longer than 30 days. The parcel is located at 515 DW Highway in the R4 Residential Aquifer Conservation Town Center Overlay, Elderly Housing Overlay, and Planned Residential Development Overlay Districts, and Wellhead Protection Area. Tax map 5D-2, Lot C 002, case number 2019-8.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Drew. Can you also, there's a board on the bottom of the petition, there's a board should the board, staff recommendation.
Sorry. Should the board decide to grant the variances, staff recommends that the following conditions be made as part of the motion. The temporary sign shall be removed from the site within 30 days of the total occupancy of the plaza. And that's it.
That's it. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? 500. I'm going to read the next one in. Ted Jarvis petitioner and GTO NH LLC owner, variance under section 17.08 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 120 square foot temporary sign, whereas maximum of 32 square feet is permitted, and to permit the display of the sign for longer than 30 days. The parcel is located at 515 Daniel Webster Highway in the R4 Residential Aquifer Conservation Town Center Overlay, Elderly Housing Overlay, and Planned Residential Development Overlay Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, Tax Map 5D-2, Lot C002, case number 2019-19.
I would just recommend for procedurally, you ask the applicant to say that the criteria are the same as the previous case and open and close the hearing.
Yes,
Would you agree that the criteria is the same for
absolutely.
both?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Is there anybody who wants to speak for this petition? Anybody who wants to speak against this petition? I'll close the public hearing. Can I have a motion or any discussion?
Motion?
Go ahead.
I motion that the board grant Ted Jarvis petitioner and GTONH LLC owner variance under section 1708 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 120 square foot temporary sign, whereas a maximum of 32 square feet is permitted, and to permit the display of the sign for longer than 30 days. The parcel is located at 515 Daniel Webster Highway in the R4 Residential Aquifer Conifer Town Center Overlay, Elderly Housing Overlay, and Planned Residential Development Overlay Districts and Wellhead Protection Area. Tax Map 5D-2, Lot C002, case number 2019-19.
With the staff recommended condition?
With the staff recommended condition that the temporary signs be removed from the site within 30 days of total occupancy of the plaza.
Do I have a second?
second.
Seconded by Rod. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? 500. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
You as well, thank you.
Next, Scott Watkins petitioner and Paul Shea owner, variance under section 3.05 of the zoning ordinance to permit a carport 13.5 feet from the front property line, whereas 30 feet is required. The parcel is located at 10 Big Wood Drive in the R4 Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 4D, Lot 3030, case number 2019-20. Is Mr. Watkins or Mr. Shea here?
I'm here. Mr. Shea is making the meeting.
Come on down, sign in, please. And
Well, the petitioner signs in, just wanted to highlight from the staff recommendation memo, from the staff memo, that the petitioner has indicated that the property owner does have a physical disability, and there is a statute that does allow the board to grant a variance without a finding of hardship in those situations, and those requirements you will find in the memo that I had written for this particular case.
thank you. If you could state your name and
Scott Watkins, and I'm proposing to build a 24 by 20 carport for Mr. Shea in front of his house. It's going to have a black metal roof, complete trim kit, and I'm looking for some relief in the front.
okay, if you could go through the criteria, we'll just stop after each one in case there's any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Number one, I feel a literal enforcement of this provision would result in unnecessary hardship for Mr. Shea due to the fact he is handicapped and moves around with a rolling walker. And I do not foresee any harm or adverse effects to the public interest stemming from this carport.
Questions? Number two?
Number two, the spirit of the ordinance. The new structure will be located on property owner's driveway in the front of the house. Prefab trusses for the carport will have the same pitch, 5'12" in height, 13 feet as the existing home. Therefore, I feel this carport would not impede light, air quality, view, or quality of life for neighbors or butters. They're up for upholding the spirit of the ordinance.
Questions? Drew?
I have a question.
Yes, good.
So the petitioner is requesting the variance for a carport, which is basically open air, meaning no full sides, no front enclosure.
Yes.
If we approve the carport, would that preclude them from enclosing it at a later date? In other words, if they wanted to enclose it at a later date, would they have to come back before?
Yes,
The
because
zoning
the
board.
request is specifically for a carport.
Okay, I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, he wouldn't be closing it, and it's strictly for the cars. And it'll be sided up 4 feet off the ground to match the house. It's all gonna look the same.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
Alright.
Oh, okay.
Number 3?
Any questions more on that? No?
I don't think other than that.
Okay, number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice because Mr. Shea is 77 years old, he uses a rolling walker to assist him in getting around his house, he's handicapped. He feels the carport's a great way to assist him in getting safe access back and forth from his house into the carport without having to deal with snow, ice, that kind of stuff in the winter. It wouldn't keep snow off his vehicles and the ground where he walks and could possibly slip and fall. And he does slip and fall. He just fell like 4 weeks ago, got 6 stitches in his chin.
Oh.
So I built him a couple handicap ramps around the home. And this is just another step to make it a little more easier for him to get in and out.
Any questions on number 3? Number 4?
Number 4. Okay, the price of the carport's gonna be a little over $16,000 with heavy timber framing, prefab trusses, black metal roof with complete trim kit. The tops of both gable ends, as well as 4 feet up on both sides of the carport, will be vinyl sided to match the existing home. It should look nice when it's completed, and I don't see this diminishing any property values in the area at all.
Questions? I would tend to agree with that. Sounds like it's actually, it's not gonna be one of those fabric carports that.
No,
it's
I'm gonna
be-
make it nice. It's gonna be heavy
nice setup.
duty, all
Yeah.
prefab trusses and a
Excellent.
nice metal roof with full trim kit,
At this point, Mr. Chairman, the board could make a determination that the hardship is irrelevant based on the statute, if you'd like.
Based on the staff's recommendation, do we need to go into hardship, or does everybody have enough information to make a decision?
The other
We're good,
piece,
we're good.
yeah, the other piece of that is if the board so chooses, you could say that this particular variance would only run as long as Mr. Shea is in the property because of that waiving of the hardship for the physical disability. But that's an option. The board doesn't necessarily have to do that, but the statute does allow you to basically end the variance when the person with the disability leaves the property. That would be the case if you were to condition it that way.
I don't
You don't have to.
I don't see the reason to condition that.
Yeah.
No, that would, yeah, I agree, Kathy.
Just wanted the board to be aware of it.
We can discuss that on the deliberation. Is there anything else any other questions from Mr. Watkins?
Nope.
Is there anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody that'd like to speak against this petition? I'm gonna close the public hearing. Kathy, I agree with you. I don't think that putting a stipulation on it is necessary. I don't think that's really, I agree with the public interest side of it, so I don't think that's particularly necessary. And obviously, as staff has recommended, as Tim has suggested, it is a carport, and it's being approved for a carport. If somebody in the future wants to make that into a garage, then they need to come before the board to do that, so. Any other discussion, questions? Do I have a motion? Drew?
I make a motion that we grant Scott Watkins and Paul Shea the variance under section 3.05 of the zoning ordinance to permit a carport 13.5 feet from the front property line, whereas 30 feet is required. The parcel is located at 10 Bigwood Drive in the R4 Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 4D, lot 030, case number 2019-20.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Rod. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 500. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you
set.
very much. Thank you for your time. Have a good night. Excuse me? Yeah, I have one of those.
No, I might come over tomorrow to personally inspect.
Oh, yeah, that's clean. Nice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watkins. You too. Thank you. Next petition, 17 Premium Outlets LLC, petitioner owner, variance under section 2.02.4.d of the zoning ordinance to permit a personal services business within I-2 Industrial District. The parcel is located at 17 Premium Outlets Boulevard in the I-2 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, tax map 3C Lot 191-03, case number 2019-21.
Chris Sendis.
Hi, Chris.
Here to try to get a personal services into the I-2 zoning for our building. It's at the entrance to the Premium Outlet Mall. Right now, it's we've got a vacant space between the Qdoba and the Starbucks. There's also a DCU office there.
Thought there was a Sprint store there.
There had been a Sprint store.
Wow.
They're not there
Okay.
anymore.
This is the
So,
space they're talking
but
about.
Okay.
So,
I was in that space like a couple months ago.
yeah. I guess they didn't get the people they needed.
Okay.
But and I guess the since the outlet mall is there, we are kind of hoping that, or I don't know, it seems almost as if the use as an industrial, like I-2 use group, maybe is not as relevant now. It's almost more, I think, like commercial 2 are part of a mixed, mixed use development, especially with like there's a bunch of apartments, I guess, that are going to be coming in soon.
That's a whole different part of the
Right.
complex.
Yeah.
This particular complex is still zoned as an industrial.
The entirety, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the entirety of that area is zoned I-2. The outlet mall went through a specific conditional use permit process to allow those types of uses in the industrial district. This parcel that we're talking about tonight at 17 Premium Outlets Boulevard was not part of that conditional use permit. Therefore, it's subject to the standard types of uses that are allowed in the I-2 district.
So what's the personal services business you're looking to put in there?
This one is specifically a nail salon.
Okay.
I guess they've got one branch in Nashua, I believe, and they wanted to open a second one here.
Okay. If we want to go through the criteria, we can stop after each one if we have any questions.
All right. So the granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. The property is at the entrance to one of the largest retail centers in the state. It is already a destination for many more people every day than could be served by the salon. It would not noticeably increase traffic to the site, if at all. The parking should be less than what would be required for a restaurant, as the salon will not be able to serve as many clients simultaneously. The salon hours will not open. The salon will not open earlier or close later than the adjacent restaurants. A salon is of a benign nature, and a salon will not negatively affect the surrounding properties, and hopefully will be mutually beneficial.
Questions? Number 2.
The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the zoning ordinance and the building code is to promote the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the town of Merrimack and to make it an attractive place in which to live. The nail salon will act almost as an accessory to the predominantly retail and restaurant uses in the immediate vicinity. As such, it will increase convenience for people seeking to improve their appearance.
Number 2. Any questions on number 2? Number 3.
Granting the variance would do substantial justice because, given the nature of the butters, the outlet mall and the Fidelity Office Park, I-2 zoning may not be as appropriate for our site as it used to be. A document entitled The Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions and Grant of Easements Affecting Real Property describes a relationship between the ownership interests of the Merrimack Premium Outlets and our property. It declares acceptable uses for the given property to be retail stores, commercial enterprises, restaurants, related recreational uses, and uses similar. It further limits uses in Article 5.3 with one limitation preventing industrial and warehouse uses. And the malls frequently have personal care services such as salons inside them.
Any questions on 3? Number 4.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished. The given property has already been constructed. The exterior appearance and site improvements will not change except for signage that will abide by local ordinances. The aforementioned covenants limit the nature of any businesses to ones that would be compatible with the mall. And the nature and volume of traffic to the site should not noticeably change due to the change in use.
That's the only one I actually have a question on. Is when, and you brought up the traffic. How big is this salon gonna be?
I think they're gonna have like 6 pedicure stations and 6 manicure stations.
So you could have up to 12 people in there at one time.
In theory, but I've been told that they are only gonna have, I think, like 4 to 6 employees at a time.
Is it walk-in or appointments? Or both?
I do not know. I would imagine there's appointments. I don't know about walk-in.
So my concern is related to, would be more related to parking and availability.
The site has sufficient parking for
Does
this
have
use, yes.
sufficient parking, okay. Any other questions? Number 5.
Unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because 1, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because the closest abutter, the Outlet Mall, is almost entirely retail in nature. It has its own conditional use permit that greatly changed the use of that property from the I-2 zoning that it had been subject to. If our property were to be used as many of the zoning allowed uses, it would detract from the Premium Outlet Mall experience, potentially making it a less successful mall, which is why we have the covenant. The other abutter, Fidelity, is a large office campus with probably no industrial use and only accessory storage use, if at all. Furthermore, the structures on that site are not even visible from our site.
Number 2.
And the proposed use is a reasonable one because people often see outings to the Outlet Mall as an outing. They go to shop, of course, but some also go to feel good, to see and to be seen. Shopping is often a social activity. As such, it makes sense to locate a salon in such an area to give people a convenient place to relax and improve their appearance.
Other questions on number 2, or does everybody think that that's sufficient for unnecessary hardship? Ben? I'm okay. Are there any other questions? Your board? Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody who'd like to speak against this petition? Okay, if there's no further comments, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any discussion on the board? My only concern was the parking, obviously, but according to Tim and staff, there's enough parking there to accommodate.
There is. I mean, there's a possibility that 200 people could want to go into Digital Credit Union at the same minute, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, you got people coming and going out of
Right.
Starbucks and.
The parking requirement for this type of use is actually less than it would be for a retail store, so.
Really?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And there is ample parking up there.
Yeah.
Because most of the Starbucks people are not parking. They're just on the
Driving
roundabout.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go into DCU fairly often,
Yeah.
and the parking lot behind Starbucks is almost always empty.
Empty.
Yep.
Yeah, I pull my trucks in there, I got plenty of room to,
Oh, yeah, right.
yeah. So, yeah, there should be plenty of parking way in back.
All right.
So, I
Sure.
think empty storefront, person wants to start a business.
Yeah. Ben, any comments? Nope. Good. All right, can I have a motion?
Motion?
Go ahead.
I submit a motion that we approve the variance for 17 Premium Outlets LLC owner, variance under Section 2.02.4.d of the zoning ordinance to permit a personal services business within the I-2 Industrial District. The parcel is located at 17 Premium Outlets Boulevard in the I-2 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area. Tax map 3C, lot 191-03, case 2019-21.
Have a second. Seconded by Rod. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 500. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. We'll take 1 minute for I read the next one.
Statutory reason you would have to recuse yourself is if you would stand to gain financially or benefit from it. You're not precluded from.
You'll still be able to go there and get your nails done.
But thank you for bringing that up, Drew. Next, Nathan Demers, petitioner, owner, section, variance under section 3.02 of the zoning ordinance to allow for all 3 lots in a proposed 3-lot subdivision to have approximately 169 feet of frontage, whereas 250 feet is required. The parcel is located at 26 and 30 Thornton Road West in the R1 Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 2C, lot 068 and 068-03. Cases numbers 2019-22, 23, and 24.
Just for the board's purposes, I made the decision to combine these into one agenda item, but there are 3 separate variances, one for each of the proposed lots that's being requested here tonight. So in following with the board's typical procedure, I'd recommend that you vote on each variance separately.
Thank you. Hi.
Good evening. Is this on? Test, test.
Nope.
The light's on. Test, test. There it is.
There you go.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's always a pleasure to be here. Attorney Greg Michael with Brett Allard, also an attorney at my office for the Nathan Demers petition that you've just read into the record. I'd like to point out a few salient factors. Hopefully I can remember the numbers. I've got them written down. What you have right now is the pink lot here. That's 68.3. The balance, and my finger, it goes across the top of the pink lot. I know I'm showing you yellow there, and that'll become plain in a minute. The balance of this is another single lot. That's lot 68. The proposal before the board is to allow, I would say, better use of this acreage. It's a fairly substantial piece of land. The current lot is lot 3 here is 85,456 square feet. The other lot is 257 and 677 square feet. This is a fairly large parcel. The total area is 3/6, about 8 acres, a little more than 8 acres in size. Right now, there is development here on the larger parcel as well as on the smaller parcel. I would point out that the smaller parcel results from a subdivision back in, I believe, '84, when the soils delineations were a bit different, and we didn't need the same size lot that we need now. So if you're wondering how that lot came into existence, that's basically what happened. issue here tonight really is, in some respects, a soils issue. And you say to yourselves, why am I saying that? If this were slight soils, we wouldn't be here. We'd only need 150 feet of frontage and, of course, 40,000 square feet. But because of the soil definitions, then it requires the larger size that we're talking about. In this instance, all three lots can adequately and safely have wells and septics located on the lots in compliance with all state and local regulations. That's an important criteria, and quite frankly, that's the criteria that established these larger lot sizes. Frontage really didn't have a whole lot to do with it, but again, it was expanded to prevent overcrowding or squeezing of homes within areas where they shouldn't be. You know, before coming here, I pulled out the old Metzger case. That's kind of the flagship case on frontage requirements and zoning. It stays away from hardship, stays away from the other criteria, and it focuses on it as follows. And the court said, usually frontage requirements can be justified on the basis that they are a method of determining lot size to prevent overcrowding. That's the Supreme Court saying that. In the case before us, that's the Metzger case, the size of the plaintiff lot far exceeds the necessary size requirement and the 200 feet frontage, and that was what the frontage was required. And Metzger only had 130 feet on an approved road, is not necessary to accomplish that end. So the court clearly outlined the fact that you need to look at these parcels. You need to look at the land. You need to understand where frontage is a significant issue, and it's not a significant issue in this case. The court said it's not to say that there cannot be reasonable regulations, which there are under our ordinance, but you look at them carefully. And in this instance, when the restriction is applied to a particular piece of land is unnecessary to accomplish a legitimate public purpose, the gain to the public is slight, but the harm to the citizen and his property is great, the exercise of the police power, that's granting the ordinance or putting an ordinance in effect, becomes arbitrary and unreasonable. And the court reversed it and said, that's more than enough frontage on this parcel, on this lot. And that's really what we have here. If you closely look at it, the lot that we're bringing out of this is going to be the largest lot, over 3 acres. I would point out that in the process of doing this, when we go to the planning board, we're going to increase the size of the pink lot to make it a conforming lot size. Right now, it's not conforming. It's 85,000, 83,000, whatever. We're going to raise that to 100. So every one of the lots will be conforming size-wise. All of the setbacks will be conforming appropriately. All of the septics and so forth associated with any construction will be in accordance with the town and state regulations, which have become much more stringent over the past 20 or so years, or I should say 30 years from the time the original subdivision was created, making that particular pink lot and making the pink lot an allowed lot for construction. So we firmly believe that this is a good plan, and I'll allow Brett to take you through the criteria if you're ready. Thank you.
Before the criteria,
Yes.
Attorney Michael, I have a couple questions.
Shoot.
So the overhead photograph I have shows on the bigger lot, and it doesn't show it divided, but it shows, looks like some buildings on the far right corner, and then up towards the pink line shows buildings. Are those going to be demolished and new homes being
To
built?
be raised, to be raised, to be
Okay.
raised.
Okay.
We're going to make it conforming.
Okay.
That's the long and the short of your question. Those are going to be torn down.
And the goal, is the goal of your client to raise those and then have single-family homes built on each of those lots?
No.
Okay.
Hold on. House here,
Yep,
pink. House here, yellow. And they're here.
yep.
They're here. One house here.
Okay,
One house here.
okay.
We all, so, and they're the abutters, obviously. They're the closest abutters to this, as I'm sure Brett will highlight. 1, 2, 3. All conforming in size, all conforming setbacks, It's just the road frontage. And I ask you, does road frontage really, is it a meaningful measurement in evaluating these lots? The answer to that's no. Thank you.
Ultimately, what we have here is a combination of a lot line adjustment and a subdivision. There are 2 lots there today. The pink lot is being added to through a lot line adjustment, and the remainder lot is being subdivided into 2 lots. So you end up with 1 new building lot out of this 3-lot subdivision.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add,
Yes.
I visited the street where this proposal sits, and the houses are set well back from the street.
I noticed that.
All of the lots in question, as well as the entire neighborhood, is heavily treed.
Yep.
So there's good privacy. You drive down the street and there's nothing that's gonna jump out of the ordinary.
Okay.
No one's gonna say, oh my God, there's not enough frontage. It looks like a rather typical semi-rural neighborhood in southern New Hampshire.
Okay. Let's go with number 1, granting the variance.
So granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The first note that I'd like to make is that this is a single-family residential use, which is permitted by right in this zone. As Attorney Michael stated, the purpose of frontage requirements as a mechanism for ensuring adequate lot areas to prevent overcrowding and congested development. Here we have 2 existing lots which have existed for many years and have safely and appropriately accommodated 2 independent dwellings and septics and wells. And due to the substantial size of the proposed lots, there won't be any overcrowding or congestion if the frontage variances are granted, and all the lots will comply with setbacks. There's obviously enough area to have a 3rd building lot on there, and to be contrary to the public interest, the variance must unduly conflict with the ordinance such that it violates basic zoning objectives, and that simply is not the case here.
Any questions on number 1? Number 2.
So the courts have held that the spirit of the ordinance prong is very similar to the public interest prong, so I would incorporate by reference my previous comments. The only other thing I would like to add that I think is actually particularly appropriate to the spirit of the ordinance prong is that by granting this variance, lot 68-3 will be converted from non-conforming to conforming. As Attorney Michael said, it's currently 85,456 square feet, but if the variance is approved, it will be expanded to 100,000 square feet to comply with the severe soils area requirement.
Questions? Number 3, please.
Substantial justice is done. Any loss to the individual that's not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. Here, the only new lot with potential for development is sandwiched between the 2 existing lots that are already developed. So there won't be any effect on the public if the variances are granted, and certainly no benefit to the public if the variances are denied. There would only be detriment to the applicant, so we would propose that substantial justice is done.
Number 4.
The values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. As I said, both existing lots that are there today are already improved with the single-family homes and related infrastructure. As a result of the subdivision, the only new buildable lot will be in the middle of them. So there won't be any effect on surrounding property values because any new development will occur between the applicant's existing improved properties. And there's substantial wooded area to the rear of the property, I guess to the north, before you hit the big Fidelity complex, which is way back from where this is, but they are in a butter. And to the extent there remains any question about any of this, the applicant would have to go forward with subdivision approval, and the planning board will take adequate measures to ensure that surrounding property values will not be diminished.
Number 5.
Literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. The special conditions that distinguish it from other properties in the area are appropriately for this type of request the area of the property itself. It's the fact that it is much bigger than most of the other properties in the area to begin with, which is why it's so suitable for this sort of proposal. The applicant's property is about 8 acres, even lot 68 on its own. The easterly lot is 5.92 acres, and if you look at the 3 closest properties to the west of this property, Lot 68-1, 68-2, and 67. According to the Merrimack GIS online, those lots are 1.03 acres, 1.61 acres, and 2.81 acres respectively, where we have 8 here. And the 3 closest properties to the east are lots 2C, 69, 70, and 74-5. Those lots are 2.27 acres. Oh, yeah, and I don't think those lots have 250 feet of frontage either.
We put up a little schematic, I don't know if you can see it here, of some of the abutting lots. And those lots are pretty much all substandard, quite frankly. A couple of them might be okay, but when you look at frontage and size, I would think there's a problem, as Brett is pointing out. This area has been developed over a longer period of time than some areas of Merrimack, and it's, you know, this project fits the area. I guess that's the way I want to leave it. Thank you.
In any event, our property that we're proposing is at least 6 acres bigger than the biggest of the surrounding 6 properties I just mentioned. So that is certainly a special condition that distinguishes it from other properties in the area and is one that is particularly appropriate for this sort of proposal. Owing to those special conditions, there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the 250-foot frontage regulation and its application to this property. Again, the purpose of frontage is a mechanism to ensure adequate area to prevent overcrowding and congested development. Due to the substantial size of the area on the properties we have here, there won't be any threat of overcrowding. And again, the planning board will have to ensure that, will ensure during subdivision approval and their proceedings that this all goes according to plan and the appropriate procedures are followed.
Any questions? Any further comments?
No.
Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody that would like to speak against this petition? Any comments from the community?
I would just state that I know typically when we have multiple variance requests, the board votes on each separately. However, given that this is going to be treated as a single project at the planning board level, I'm comfortable as staff if you wish to combine all 3 into one motion.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to ask that question. So we are going to vote on all of them at the same time instead of rehearing or having them verify the same information. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there any comments from the board, questions? Like Ben said, it's pretty, we're not talking really small lots here, and they're going to restructure one of them, so it works out well. So if there's no comments, questions, can I have a motion?
So, make a motion in Nathan Demers, petitioner owner, variances under section 302 of the zoning ordinance to allow for all 3 lots in a proposed 3-lot subdivision to have approximately 169 feet of frontage, whereas 250 feet is required. The parcels are located at 26 and 30 Thornton Road West in the R1 Residential and Aquifer Conservation Districts. Tax map 2C, lots 068 and 068-03, cases number 2019-22, 23, and 24.
Do I have a second? Kathy seconds.
We have that with a condition that they receive planning board approval, even though it's not in the, actually, is it in the?
There was no
Yeah.
condition listed.
I would recommend that the condition be added, that subject to subdivision approval by the planning board.
Do attorneys agree with that?
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. We have to go
Approval for
there.
any subdivision?
We can't do it without them. So I have no
All right.
problem with it. Thank you.
Seconded by Kathy. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next, Apple Development Limited Partnership Petitioner Owner, special exception under section 2.02.3 of the zoning ordinance to allow for a residential use in the C2 General Commercial District. The parcel is located at 360 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial Aquifer Conservation Planned Residential Development Overlay and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts Tax Map 4D-3, Lot 001, case number 2019-25.
Mr. Chairman, if I can suggest, number one, that Mr. Barsamian hasn't been sworn in, so you probably want to swear him in.
Yep.
And secondarily, if the board would indulge me, I'd like to have an opportunity to do a little bit of a understanding of the zoning decision that has resulted in them being here, the interpretation from Robert that that they basically explain why they're here in front of you instead of in front of the planning board for this.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you got?
I do.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the reason this particular project, items number 11 and 12 are on your agenda, this particular site could be developed with this 40-unit multifamily building without any need to come to the zoning board. This is an area that is eligible to be developed as a planned unit development, which would allow a ridiculous amount of residential units, somewhere up around 400, to be built on this particular parcel, without any need to come to the zoning board whatsoever. However, if the applicant were to choose that direction, it limits the uses that are non-residential that would be able to be happening on the property. And given the existing redeveloped parcel, it would essentially render all the restaurants, Planet Fitness, the trampoline park, and the credit union as non-conforming uses because they aren't specifically permitted in a PUD. Our recommendation to the applicant was that rather than tie his hands and have to come to the zoning board anytime a tenant changed in that development, that he come to the board and request the standard special exception to allow residential in the commercial district, and then a variance to allow for the density that he's seeking, which is only 40 units on the property. So that's the reason why he's here. Should the board deny the special exception and the variance, there still is an opportunity and an avenue for him to do this without the zoning board. But we felt this was the cleanest way in order to prevent future trips to the zoning board for the non-residential portion of the property. So I just think it's important to have that baseline before we hear that case itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much for your time hearing our applications tonight. I am Peter Imsey. I'm attorney with the law firm of Sullivan and Hollis, here appearing on behalf of the applicant in connection with this project. And with me is Mr. Rob Barsamian, principal of the applicant. And we will kind of split up a little bit of the presentation duties as we go forward. I think that our plan, if it's okay with the board, is I can give you a very quick 10,000-foot overview of what we're going to be talking about. At that point, I'll let Mr. Barsamian talk a little bit about the activities at the site and the plan, generally how this fits in with the plans for the development of the project. And after that, I will go through the specific criteria for both the special exception and the variance for you, and as is your current practice. If that's acceptable to you, I can start. I
That would
did.
work. Yep.
Okay.
I would agree. Yep.
I have some display boards that I'll be showing you, but I also brought some reduced size copies of the boards. If it's will help the board follow along what I'm doing.
Actually, we actually can't accept anything once the meeting starts. We do have this proposal, so we all know what we're looking at here for what's being proposed.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. The different boards have different practices. I have to learn
That's
rules. Very good. That's fine. The first
You were
board-
sworn in earlier as well, right?
Yes, I
Okay,
was.
just
Yep.
make sure. That's right,
I'm all
thanks.
set. The first board that I have up here, again, it's really just to allow everybody to orient themselves. Here's Daniel Webster Highway. Here is the current 360 Plaza, the East Ridge Village condominium. To the north of the property, we have the Columbia Circle. Those, are identified as condominiums. They're commercial condominiums on the map, I believe. Just up here, we've got the low cluster of cell towers, but just off this, map as reproduced, we bump into, there's another subdivision. It's the Hillcrest Drive, Breton Drive neighborhood that extends further up along the Daniel Webster Highway. The other thing that I brought to, again, just to give you a picture of what we might be talking about. Again, this is just a concept plan. We haven't been to the planning board yet. We haven't gone through site plan review. So, I mean, the applicant will have to go through site plan review. We'll have to, prepare a plan, satisfy all of that. But just so that instead of just looking at this big block back here and say, okay, what does it mean to put an apartment building back there? We provided this schematic for you so you can see how it will fit in. And, the basic issues that, right now there is a shared access between the East Village condominium and the shopping center. And then there will be an access, if you recall, there's a significant elevation change in the back of the site. So the apartment building will be up on the higher elevation. So this new access road would be built, and some configuration of a building will be built there. I will point out, just to make sure the record is clear, on the plan that you have, the building may be labeled 54 units. If it is, you can scratch that out and change that to 40. The application that, you'll be hearing that was filed and that we'll be presenting tonight is for a variance for 40 units, not for 54 units.
Now you're saying that this is actually going to be up on the hill, the building itself?
Yes,
Yeah.
by definition that, if you drive behind the building now, it's kind of cut into the ledge almost, so, it's-
Okay, so, and so I have two questions. Well, one is, there's been an approval for a sign.
Yes.
Where would the sign go?
Signs in it.
The sign should appear on the plan that you've got right in front of you. So
Okay.
this little red V.
That's the sign that we approved, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then my next question is, with the widening of the discussion of the widening of the turnpike, does that impact this project at all? Okay.
There's sufficient right-of-way for the turnpike that all the improvements are within the right-of-way.
Okay, so so the state is obviously notified if this is gonna move forward, or do they have to be?
No,
I'm just curious.
they do
Okay.
not.
I know it's more planning and all that, but just curious. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so as I said, in my outline of our presentation, that's the 10,000-foot overview and the concept plan. At this point, I'd like to let Mr. Barsamian talk to you generally about the project and the specific plans here before I go into the details of the requirements.
I won't spend too much time because I've been here before. And
Just make sure your mic's on, that's all.
I think it is, that the green light is.
Yep, there you go.
So I won't spend too much time because I think it's visually now, we can actually see the project. The one thing, we have already been to the planning board, and they have accepted our application already, and we have another meeting coming up, and we're just going through the peer review right now, so there's a lot of the technical things that we haven't really addressed that we will be addressing at the planning board. So we're kind of right in the middle of addressing any concerns as it relates to planning board-related issues. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Obviously, the project is almost complete. We're excited about that. We think we've put a pretty good mix together of tenants. We have one more tenant to kind of open up, which will be in the strip itself, and then we have one vacancy, and then we have the credit union under construction. So our goal is our next tenant will be opening in 30 days. The bank is going to try to get open before the end of the year, which will be exciting for us. And then we have one tenant that we're working with, and our goal is to get everything open by year end. So we should have 100% complete by year end. And as we were going through the commercial development and figuring out the right mix and looking at our surrounding areas, the one thing that people kept coming to us about is, what about some apartments? And, in our other projects, this live, play, stay kind of atmosphere is coming back strong. So in our other project in North Conway, we have a shopping center, we have a hotel, and now we're adding a lot of apartments for people to live where they kind of want to work out, where they want to eat, and where they want to play. And so that concept, obviously, you're seeing everywhere around New England. And we thought on this particular project, because of the mix of tenants that we have and where it is and this kind of, I guess, new concept of smaller apartments, a little more community-driven, community spaces within the complex that will also kind of cater to the retail side of things, actually work really well.
And we found that that's been very successful. So we started looking at the apartment vision of this and seeing how many apartments we thought would really work. And we didn't want to do too many apartments because there is a lot of residential around us. And we're really just adding to what already is there. You know, when you look at our project, it almost looks like it's a residential commercial development because we share a road with a residential development on our left side, and then we have the commercial on the right side. So we're just kind of adding on to what already existed. So that's kind of just the short story of it. I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but I'm happy to answer any questions as it relates to anything, because we've really studied this on all aspects. I know we're going to address more technically a lot of the issues at the planning board, whether it be with roads and pitches and traffic and all of that stuff. And so, and we're prepared to do that. But if you want to add a question about it, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why don't we get into the 5 criteria and.
This is special exception
sorry.
first, so it's not
Sorry.
5 criteria.
I apologize. There's all over the place. So, special exception first. Let me go through the criteria on that.
Sure.
AB, as a A, B, C.
That's right. Your first criteria is the specific site and appropriate location for the use in terms of the overall community development. And as, you know, teed up by Mr. Barsamian, the applicant feels that this is an optimal location for the residential development units, residential development. You know, both north and south of this parcel, we have residential activities, and there, you know, is a pattern of having commercial properties down on 3A, and then residential behind the commercial between it and the Everett Turnpike. Here, adding residential units is consistent with the current community development and the combination of the residential unit. As you know, you're going to hear this theme as I go forward with a lot of the comments, really plays into what is repeated multiple times in your master plan about this idea of creating mixed-use areas where people have walkable access to, from their residences to other commercial areas, shops, restaurants, services, or whatever. This site could be developed as further commercial development, but it's certainly not ideal for it. And in fact, you know, we think that it would probably be not the best concept to go forward with further commercial up there, especially adjacent to the residential areas, and that putting residential uses here would be much more appropriate for the site.
Questions on the first one? B?
Okay, the use will not adversely affect the neighborhood. You know, again, pretty much the similar comments that I made. You know, we have a pattern of the mixed residential commercial in this area already. Adjacent to this property, to the north, we have commercial in the frontage, and then residential behind. This will continue that type of development, and in fact, you know, provide a nice location for new uses, really consistent with the existing character of the neighborhood.
C? Oh, I'm sorry, back up. I apologize.
Yeah. You talk about the new trend towards living where you can walk to restaurants, et cetera, and stores. On your site plan, you have clearly delineated a road and sidewalk. For the sidewalk, what is the rise in the sidewalk as you go up the hill?
Well, I think that we're right in the middle of that, I think, with some of the comments we got from the peer review. So right now, I think it's at a 10 pitch, Tim?
There's a portion of it in the initial application that's indicated to be 10% right now. Yes.
10%, but I think we're trying to get that down to like an 8%.
Okay.
But it changes, because there's one area where you need a little retention area. It's like right when you come around the curve, that's the highest pitch of the sidewalk. But it's, again, much lower at the lower level of the entry, when you come into the development. So, again, it's one of those things that I'm sensitive to, the pitch of the sidewalk, the steepness of it, how easy it is to travel. And so we're in the middle of still looking at that and making sure it's, you know, done correctly.
Okay. Now, you talk about 8 or 10 I guess, degree pitch. In terms of the ADA regulations, they talk about a 1-inch rise per foot.
Right.
Is that equivalent to, you're talking about an
Yeah.
8-degree pitch?
Well, I mean, we're going to comply with all of those regulations because
good.
that's, that's something we're going to comply with.
Okay.
So on the technical side, I think we're still, again, making sure that we had a lot of comments on the peer review with sidewalks and the slope and how it's cut in, and so we're changing some things around. So
Okay.
we're going to make sure that it complies, and engineers, peer review sign off, planning board signs off, fire people sign off, et cetera, or else, they won't approve it.
Yeah, a lot of that's a little more on the planning board side.
I understand,
Yeah.
but as they said, we
I
can
think it's
ask
a-
any
I-
questions, I took
You know,
them
it's,
up on
it's
it.
one of the things that,
Sure.
that I focus on a lot. So I appreciate and we're looking at sidewalks everywhere. This is a
Yeah.
funny sight, because sidewalks come up, I don't want to go off the subject, but I do focus on how pedestrians get around, And I spent 2 hours today over here trying to figure out, okay, how are these sidewalks going to work? Can we get people to Daniel Webster Highway? Can we get them out to the light easier? And so we're not afraid to put sidewalks in. So
Yeah.
it's not a money thing for us, but we just don't want a sidewalk to nowhere. Because then, there are some sidewalks on Daniel Webster Highway that don't go anywhere. Like I was walking by, like next to the car wash in front of the credit union. There's a piece of sidewalk, but you really can't go anywhere with it. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how we internally can bring people to our commercial development from residential and from the street. So anyways,
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to that issue.
All right. Criteria C, there'll be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because of the project. I think as we just discussed and mentioned earlier, we will be going through a full site plan review process. The planning board has already commissioned a peer review here to look at the project. So there's no question that we will comply with all town, state, federal requirements applicable to this to provide appropriate and facilities not only for access for pedestrian and generally for the use. We think the use as a residential use fits much more in the neighborhood than, say, further commercial development of the site.
So this is an area that I kind of had a question, and it kind of plays a little bit in the sidewalk side of it. And I realize a lot of that's planning, but I also know that safety and travel and traffic is starting to play in some of the zoning. And on the one that I'm looking at there, your driveway dumps into a parking lot. And parking lots are not, I mean, you got people coming out, going to work or what have you, and you're dumping them into a parking lot. I'm sure that this is obviously a preliminary and is going to be further reviewed by planning, but, from a safety and a hazard standpoint, it seems a little dicey to be dropping people into a parking lot, especially if you got someone running late for work,
So
come
if-
flying into a parking lot like that. And then on top of that, you have the sidewalk in which people are going to be dumped into, or you have to cross a parking lot to get to the front of the building, so.
Yeah, I can address it. Okay, so it came up in the peer review, came up in the planning board conversation, came up with me too, because we were talking about it, we've been driving. We're actually in the next revision of this. This road's gonna continue a little longer, and we're gonna actually come outside the parking lot with the access point. And we have enough room there to do that. And if we have to reconfigure a little bit, we'll do that. So again, we're on the same page. It's a planning board and fire issue also. And so and it's in the peer review, it's in the comments in the peer review, and so we're addressing it.
Okay, so the idea is to actually get this to dump onto the road, not into the parking lot.
Correct. So you won't be dumping into the park. You are going to be dumping into a road which is actually behind the parking. There's a strip of land that's wide enough and that we can fit the road in and then come up and make the road a little longer. And one of the reasons why it actually helps us actually on spreading the road out a little longer, so then obviously everything gets a little easier as far as sidewalks and heights of the road and the retaining wall and so on and so forth.
Again, the
It
whole
makes the
has,
retaining wall a little longer, but that's fine. Just the grade gets better.
and again, the hazard and the reason is, and you'd kind of address that, and I appreciate it, was getting fire apparatus or emergency apparatus up that way. Should should there be a need, so.
Yep.
Trying to get those fire trucks through a parking lot.
We got
A
it.
little dicey, so, all
We
right.
actually agree with it.
And now, the last one.
Okay, the last one is adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the use. Again, the planning board, through site plan review, is going to make sure that the project is designed appropriately, parking's appropriate, lighting's appropriate, it's served by water, sewer. We've talked about fire department review, police department, and pedestrian access. So I think there's no question that once we get through the town review process, that this definitely the facilities will be totally appropriate, adequate for the siting of this apartment building up on this part of the property.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? I'm going to open this up to the public. So, just to clarify for anyone who's going to speak for or against this project, and for the board as well, we're looking right now at just the special exception to allow residential in the commercial per the zoning ordinance. So the next one is a variance for the density variance to allow 40 multifamily residential units in there. So right now, we're just looking at the special exception, and I just want to make sure.
The special exception is the groundwork that's required to allow any residential use here, regardless of the number.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this project? Is there anybody that'd like to speak against this project? All right, well, why don't you? First of all, sir, first I need you to sign in. I also noticed that you came in a little late, so I do need you to swear in as well. Can you raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, if you could please sign in, and then just make sure the mic's on.
Okay. Affiliation.
That'll do.
Hello, okay.
Can you state your name, please?
Oh, sorry, Richard Foote, 129 Indian Rock Road.
Okay.
I don't really say if I'm against it or for it. It just seems to me, it seems to me that you got more projects going on in town. I like to say, what's the point of putting more apartments? And it seems like we have a few going in already. And to me, it's like, well, what's the point of doing this? I can't really say that I like it a lot, but it seems to me most of the time when I say I don't like anything, I'm in the minority on things like that. And it just seems to me that the town is, all these things get approved. And I guess one comment I would have is that I see a lot of projects that go in. The projects go in, it's okay, you're the houses that are already here. They've been there for 20 years, 30 years, 100 years. And the developer comes in and says, okay, well, this is my property, goes right up against your property. And well, because it's my property now, I'm taking everything down. So there's no buffer zone really required. And it kind of like, well, your property had a chance to leave something there and you didn't. So developer-wise, you have to do something. And there's no zoning rules, I guess, for something like that. But I see that happening all the time. And it seems to me that for the residents, that's kind of not a very nice thing to have. It seems like the developer should have to leave something there for a little bit of a buffer zone, Like I said, I could be completely wrong on that, but.
Hear you, I can answer, you can answer.
For single-family residential developments, the town has no buffer requirements. For multifamily or commercial industrial, the town does have, because this is it's a multifamily project, it is subject to site plan review, and it is subject to buffer requirements.
One of the things I noticed is I don't know the road to the theater. When you're going down that road, just before you get to the theater, on the left there, they cleared a bunch of space up.
And they have to
there.
plant new trees in there
Yeah,
to make
plant-
their buffer compliant.
I feel like they could leave something there. What I know. That's all my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak against this petition? Would you like to come on down? Gentlemen, if you could just let her have the table, please, I appreciate it.
Switch.
Okay. My glasses. My name is Alicia Flanders.
You
and
could have
I'm
a,
the-
if you could just have a
Oh,
seat
microphone.
and talk into the
Sit and
mic.
talk into the mic.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay, I
great.
don't have to yell then, huh?
Thank you very much.
Okay. My name is Alicia Flanders. I live at 50 Pondview Drive in Merrimack, which is Horseshoe Pond condominiums that are just across the street.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there for 33 years. I mostly work, sometimes local, but mostly in Massachusetts. And I find sometimes coming home, there's a lot of traffic.
Mhm.
Just sometimes I'll sit through a couple of lights just to get home. Now, we have the mall across the street, which is staggered. People come and people go at different times. You know, maybe you get a lot of people at Tucker's for breakfast and things like that, but there's not a whole bunch of traffic at one time. However, when you've got residential, you've got, well, first of all, if you have 40 units, I don't know what the size of the units are. Are they single bedroom, two bedroom? I'm assuming even a one bedroom or studio, you might have a couple living there.
Right.
So if you've got 40 units, you've got 80 cars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I find when there's residential, people all go off to work at the same time, kind of come home in reasonable the same time. So now there's only one entrance and exit here, and that is right onto Daniel Webster Highway.
Right.
So we're gonna be
Correct.
adding 80 more cars potentially, maybe more, because some people, you know, if you've got someone with a kid, a teenage kid has a car. So there's a lot of extra cars, extra traffic. The town needs to figure out how to accommodate that extra traffic. You know, it's only one road. It's sometimes trying to get out of Horseshoe Pond condominium at 4 or 5 o'clock. You just sit and sit. And yes, you wait for the lights, but sometimes the lights don't matter because there's just such a backup of people and no one can go anywhere. There's nowhere to go further north. So that was the biggest concern I have is the impact on traffic. So that's.
And a legit concern, because they're actually putting an apartment complex in near where I live, and I could sit there for 5 to 10 minutes before I could take a left or right onto Daniel Webster Highway, and I'm up towards the Bedford end of it. So
you're saying the
I
same
understand
thing, yeah.
your concern regarding the traffic side, and that's something that has to be taken a look at by planning, and it's something that they're going to evaluate and see what the impact would be on the area, and make a determination if they have to either change lights or what have you to kind of try to relieve some of that pressure.
Is there any way that they could hook onto a northbound ramp on the turnpike? coming from there?
Those design type issues are not anything this board
Okay,
has
never
anything to do
mind.
with.
Okay, so that's my concern is most of the impact on traffic. So, having
Appreciate
said
that.
that,
All right.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak against this petition? Come on down.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, it's green. My name is Stuart Hollander. I live at 33 Pondview Drive across the road.
Okay.
So first, I'm a little confused about the number of units, and I think you can understand a bit of the confusion because this is not a simple request for a variance. It's a combination, and you gave some explanation up
We're
front.
currently considering a special exception that will allow a residential use of this property.
Okay.
The specific numbers are not part of the petition that's currently in front of the board. That's the second petition.
That's the second one. You did mention 400. Was that a potential maximum should this go through?
No, that is under the town's planned unit development requirements. The applicant has an option of doing a different approval method than what he's proposing here. That is purely through the planning board that allows far greater densities than what is currently permitted in the ordinance. So there is the ability in a planned residential development to have up to 400 residential units. Physically, could they do 400 units here? No. But the ordinance would allow that number based on that type of approval process. This applicant is opting not to do that. They're opting to go this route and limiting it to 40.
Okay, so the application in no way involves more than 40.
The variance that they are requesting in the next petition is to allow specifically 40 residential units.
Okay. Under the program that you mentioned earlier, would they have to do something to the shopping center to go that other route?
They would have to have the entirety of the site approved as a planned unit development. In doing so, that would render almost every use that is in that current commercial shopping center non-conforming, because those uses are not allowed in a planned residential development.
Okay, so for the purposes of today's meeting, the fact that they could go to such and such board and is not really relevant for
Correct.
right now.
They're-
So you're just giving it as background.
I gave that as background, that
Okay.
should they not be successful in the method that they're approaching this now, they do have another avenue to go forward.
Okay, but we shouldn't read that as anything to imply that if you don't do this, it could be worse.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay, so that's really background. Okay. And then, do I understand correctly that this is an optional thing, that the board is not required to take any particular special decision one way or the other, based on the evidence?
The special exception is a use that is specifically permitted,
Permitted.
so long as you meet the criteria that were outlined by the applicant.
Okay, and should the criteria be met, it's still permitted but not required?
It is required by this board, if they meet those criteria, that they grant the special exception.
So even though the terminology used is may grant, you're telling me it's a requirement?
Under state law and under case law in New Hampshire, if
is
you
a
meet those criteria, the board is obligated to grant
Okay.
approval.
Okay. So we'll have another opportunity to respond to the
Yes, they'll have to
second
do a
one
separate
after I can
presentation
come
on
up for
that.
that. Okay, excuse me. So one of my concerns here is that the location of this is in the back of a shopping center. And I believe the discussion is regarding rental apartments, so I'm not certain about that. But I'm hearing and I'm picturing rental apartments. We'll talk about the quantity of rental apartments later, but we're talking about rental apartments, possibly a large number, possibly denser than one would normally do without having to come to the board. And I'm thinking of the population that's going to be there. And I'm thinking behind a shopping center, I'm thinking of kids, teenagers, especially with that hill, which would be a great thing for roller skating, skateboarding. I'm thinking this could be some kind of magnet in town, because it's a nice place. You're sort of hidden. If they want to be doing stuff maybe they wouldn't be proud of, they could do it back there. As far as the cars and the speeding, I know you've mentioned that, so I'm going to try to not repeat it. But I wouldn't take it lightly. Even people who live in a flat area, speeding's a continual issue. I felt that the discussion regarding the road, while it may certainly be done in a good way and properly, I've seen the site, and what I heard a few minutes ago to me seemed more like hand-waving. I'm sure they could present the details, but I'm not convinced how you get like a second road that isn't going to interfere with the parking area. I'm just not convinced of that. And so on those accounts, I would consider that it's not clear that it doesn't adversely affect the neighborhood, and it's not clear that it's truly appropriate as a use. It's going to be up on a hill. This is a fairly unusual use, and I don't fault whatsoever the people wanting to do this, because people have property, they want to develop it, and there's reason for that. But I don't think that the case has fully been made that it's appropriate and that it will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Okay, so we'll come back later. Oh, I do have another point. So this is relevant. I was here when the sign issue was discussed, and I objected to that. There was another hearing, I think maybe it was a different board, a planning board, about 2-3 weeks ago. and notices went out. Do you know about this? Yeah. Okay, so there was one. I didn't get the first notice for that. There's supposed to be 3 notices. I got the notice the day before, and it said second notice. Probably a mistake. But I went to the postmaster, and I told him that. I told her that. And this time around, I also did not get the first notice. I learned about it through a neighbor. So I went up to the postmaster, and she said she had checked with the postman, with the delivery person, and they said it had been delivered, that they had done that. There is, so I'm going to make the point that there's evidence that not everyone has been notified. And I understand it's not the responsibility of the board or the applicant, the petitioner, to be involved with that. Everything was done. I know that everything was mailed out. I saw the certified things. But I want to point out that I'll tell you something, but the point here is that I don't believe the community has been fully notified. And I don't know the details about the law and the requirement, but there's some kind of requirement that people be notified so they can comment, ask questions, and so on. And I don't believe that's happening. So I will say that there is evidence that the failure to deliver wasn't just for me, and that it wasn't just a mistake. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying there's evidence that points to that, and that the post office is investigating it, taking it very seriously. And I want to say one more thing.
Okay, because I understand your concern. You're really off topic at this point.
Okay,
as
all right.
it
You know, I'll
relates to
pass
what
on
we're
that. I'll
doing.
pass on
Yeah.
that. But there's evidence, and so I'm asking the board, if it's possible, to, after the hearing, to postpone, if you guys can do it. If it's not a part of something you can do, I understand that. A decision that would not be reversible until the next meeting next month. I mean, you're having the hearing, you're hearing everyone. I'm requesting it. I understand it's unlikely. Okay.
I will say what I said at the planning board meeting a couple weeks ago. The applicant and the town met all statutory requirements. The postmark is in compliance with the state statute. The attempts to deliver are on the post office. If nobody is there to claim, then it is taken back and attempted 2 more times. We get stacks of unreturned and unopened notices on almost every project that is in front of all boards and committees in town. This is not something that the board, frankly, has any jurisdiction over. The notice has met statutory requirements. That's all I can really say.
Okay, I respond to that briefly, very briefly.
No.
No? Okay.
No. Thank you.
I made my point.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak against this petition? Come on down, sir.
I wasn't sworn in, though.
All right, raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat and sign in. Please, thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert DeFreitas. I live at 9 Colonial, right in Eastridge. I'm not in favor of this. I mean, kind of. The only concern I have is coming off of Daniel Webster Highway and turning in where all this traffic's going to meet. Because right now I walk. There's a sidewalk that we can kind of go over there, and I want to say thank you for bringing the development, because when I moved into sorry, when I moved into my condo, there was Shaw's, there was CVS, it was bustling, but then it died out. Now it's great. But since I walk over, there's a sidewalk, and I'm just curious what they're going to do about that, because if you come in, most of the traffic's either going to go right towards the complex, towards the businesses, and left towards my complex. But then, like you said, they're going to have the traffic going to the left of that parking lot.
So, No, so the concern is where the traffic, where it's gonna
Yeah,
go,
like how they're
you're
gonna
walk over and all that.
negotiate that cluster right
That's-
there.
that's something
Because you
that-
got delivery trucks that probably go around the back. Now,
Right.
when they come out, they need to look to their right to make sure no one's coming down that hill. Like I said, you have that crosswalk, so I and most people that live in Eastridge walk over to the, either the bars or whatever, and the new Thai place is gonna be opening. I just wanna know, hopefully they get that so there's no accidents there, pedestrian vehicle. That's my big concern.
Of course, the safety, and it's going to be,
Yeah.
it's a concern of this board, but it's also going to be the concern of the planning board as well, which is where the next, it's going to go next.
Yeah.
Should everything be approved, the planning board is going to they'll do a site plan review with the developer to make sure that their road is there and it's safe, because the road obviously need to be able to get emergency apparatus up there,
Yeah.
and they don't want pedestrians obviously getting hit, so they want to make sure
Yep.
there's safe pedestrian
Exactly,
traffic.
yeah.
And so they're gonna be doing all of that and looking at all of that. Should this go forward, they're gonna do and make sure that everything is taken
Yeah.
care of from both the people walking over from East Ridge as well as cars exiting and entering, and delivery vehicles, because they're responsible for that. Because the last thing anybody wants to have happen is an accident
Exactly, yeah.
or someone getting hit or anything to that
Yeah.
nature. But very much the planning board will be addressing that when they do the final site approval. What you're looking at there is kind of an initial, more
Mm-hmm.
conceptual idea of what they're looking to do, to kind of put an idea on it. The finalization will be done
Right.
with the planning board.
Okay. I was just curious if they probably thought of bringing the road to the other side of the businesses, but
Yeah.
it just seemed like there was a lot going on there. I just wanted to make sure the safety was addressed. That's the main thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I definitely would recommend, like I said, if it does move forward, I would recommend coming to the planning board meetings.
That's the 20th.
Next planning board
obviously
meeting is
voicing
August
concerns.
20th.
That's 20th, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak against? All right, if gentlemen would like to come up, you can address anything that was said.
I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
Is there anything you'd like to address, or?
Well, I think just on some of the comments, we'll be addressing them at the planning board. I think one of the, you live.
Actually, just direct.
You live at Pond View, right? Across the street at
Yes.
Pond View. I'm actually meeting with them in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I don't know who's invited, but they asked me to come meet with them, and I said I would. So we've been in communication with them just to kind of talk to them and figure out what their concerns are. I mean, their real concern is Daniel Webster Highway, which is 2,000 feet from my entrance. So that's a different issue, which is the road itself. But I'm more than happy to go through all their issues and see if we can, collaborate a little bit together and see what their concerns are to address them. So
Okay.
that's set up for before our planning board meeting.
Okay, excellent.
Okay?
Any other comments you'd like to add?
I don't, in the interest of time, no. I think the comments and the explanations the board gave regarding planning board review, I think answered most of the questions. I think directed the concerns to the proper place to deal with issues.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Discussion from the board in regards to allowing the C2, allowing residential in the C2 General Commercial District. Initially, I kind of looked at this and was like, I don't know. But listening to Tim speak, listening to the presentation, it seems like and as Tim had said about the criteria, I think they've met the criteria, and they have a pretty good plan as far as what they're laying out. And I don't want to go too much into what would be planning board, but I understand some of the concerns as well of the people here regarding apartments and all of that as well. But that being said, the alternative would be, they could go and do this without us, and they could put in, please, sir.
I agree
So,
with you.
yeah.
And I think some of the concerns that people against were probably more directed towards the planning. And I think, you had mentioned that is the next meeting they should attend and discuss some of their concerns.
I agree. And I think that, like it's in, like Tim pointed out, as I was saying, before I was interrupted, they can easily just turn around and, you could drop 100 units back there. And then that traffic would be horrendous. But that being said, unless there's any other comments, I'd like a motion. Ben, do you have anything? Did you
No
want to add?
comments.
Okay.
Does he want to do it? I'll make a motion.
Yep.
I make a motion that we grant Apple Development Limited Partnership petition owner special exception under section 2.02.3 of the zoning ordinance to allow for residential use in the C2 commercial district. The parcel is located at 360 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial Aquifer Conservation Planned Residential Development Overlay, Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, Tax Map 4D-3, Lot 001, case number 2019-25.
With staff recommendations, the petitioner shall obtain the associated variance to permit 40 multifamily residential units on the parcel in C2 General Commercial District, whereas 1 per 40,000 square feet is allowed, and the petitioner shall obtain site plan approval from the planning board for the proposed apartment building. Do I have a second? Seconded by Kathy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstain, 5-0-0. Next petition. Apple Development Limited Partnership petitioner owner variance under section 3.02 of the zoning ordinance to permit a density of 40 multifamily residential units in the C2 General Commercial District, whereas 1 per 40,000 square feet is allowed. The parcel is located at 360 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial Aquifer Conservation Planned Residential Overlay and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, Tax Map 4D-3, Lot 001, case number 2019-26. Feel free to, we already know what you're looking to do. If you want to just jump right into the
Absolutely.
5 points.
Sure. First criteria, variance will not be contrary to public interest. I think the broadly stated, the public interest is to promote the health and safety and general welfare of your community and make it an attractive place to live. Here, this will be an attractive New England-style building. Ample parking will be provided. Screening, as mentioned earlier, will be provided. As staff has described to you, there were options where the developer might have come in with a proposal to build more units there. They are opting not to maximize density, but rather find an optimal density here that works for the project and works for the community. This is also, it's consistent with your master plan, which I noted earlier, calls for mixed-use development. Health and safety aren't an issue here because, site plan review will handle setback requirements, water, sewage, pedestrian access, fire and police safety aspects. As mentioned, buffering will be handled under the site plan review process. As we mentioned, the apartments in this location are very consistent with the existing mix of uses in the area. Will allow the town to provide, additional housing for new residents, perhaps in, different options that exist right now. And probably most important of all, it will add to the wonderful things that are happening at the center and on the site already from what it was a few years ago, and helping to continue to have it thrive and become a productive, much more productive portion of your community than it once was.
Questions on number 1? Number 2?
Spirit of the ordinance, really, sometimes I have a hard time finding the difference between purposes and spirit, but, again, mentioned that this is consistent with your master plan of developing multi-use areas. It's consistent with the local neighborhoods and the community be with the residential areas. This use will be tucked away from the road. Instead of introducing commercial use back in the rear of the lot adjacent to residential uses, it'll continue the residential uses along the back of the property, and it's consistent with the spirit and intent of the ordinance.
Questions? Number 3.
Okay, 3, the variance will do substantial justice. I think substantial justice is really, you achieve that when a landowner is permitted to realize the reasonable use of its property in the community. And in this case, this does permit that underutilized or unutilized back portion of the property to be used by the applicant to help this project thrive, but also rather than introducing a negative use, we feel this is very much a positive use, and positive for the neighborhood, positive for the area. Again, consistent with your master plan. And I think, again, I underscore it's, that this isn't the maximum number that might have been requested, but in fact is a lesser number to find a nice midpoint that's a good balance for the community and the applicant.
Number 4.
Okay, number 4, for the values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished. I think our, client, I can have Mr. Barsamian, reiterate it, feels very strongly that not only, will these, the addition to this property not cause area values to diminish, but the addition of these properties will likely cause them to increase because it will just continue this positive development in this area, bringing more folks in the area who are going to be walking to these businesses, patronizing the businesses, helping the businesses thrive, and will in fact have a net increase in value to not only this property but adjacent properties.
Number 5.
Number 5, that no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application to this particular property. I feel like a broken record here, but again, what we have here is a proposal that, while it doesn't meet the letter of the ordinance, is entirely consistent with your purposes of your ordinance. You've got an applicant who is not asking for the moon, but proposing a reasonable compromise to complete the development of this property and allow the continued development of this parcel in this area, which will, and the rote application of the ordinance will defeat that, and in fact, ultimately have a negative impact on the community because this development will be thwarted and that land will either not be developed or it could be just more commercial use, which would actually be probably a less desirable use than residential use in that back part of the property.
Number 2.
And number 2, it's a reasonable use. Much of what I just said is directly applicable, but I think in just looking at the concept plan, again, it's only a concept plan. What's really going to happen will be different, but you can see it's not going to wipe out everything that's back there. There's going to be green space retained. There'll be buffers, but we will have appropriate parking. We'll have appropriate, landscaping, sidewalks, access to the shopping center.
And I don't think that this is something that's going to affect any decision made, but what you submitted was for 25 units. You're talking about 40?
The 25 units is above what would be permitted, so 15 is what's permitted at 1 per 40,000. The 25 is the additional units to get to 40. So that essentially would bring your density, instead of it being 1 unit per 40,000, it would be 2.61 per 40,000.
Thank you for the clarification. Jinx.
And thanks for asking the question, so it was clarified.
So I think we got all of those questions answered. Is there any questions from the board? All right.
What's the acreage of the site?
Excuse me?
The acreage of the site?
The total site is something over 14 acres.
14 acres.
Yes.
It's 14.083. It's in the memo.
All right, gentlemen, if I could just have the table. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for this petition? Is there anybody who'd like to speak against this petition? Feel free to come on down.
Do I need to sign in again?
No.
So probably the things that I said before are more.
Why don't you have a seat so
Oh,
we
sit
can
in
talk on the
front
mic,
of
we get all on.
Yes, thank you.
Record, thanks.
I'm educable, but it's slow.
That's okay.
The things I said before, in
Yep.
terms of traffic impact and things like that, still stand. They're probably more applicable to this situation than the previous one. So I just want to go on the record, bringing up the traffic issue.
I appreciate that. And it sounds like that he has a meeting with the board.
Oh, the board, okay,
or
but not the
over
residents.
At your,
Okay.
where you live, Horseshoe Pond or whatever.
Pondview.
Yeah, so if you haven't received notification of that meeting, you may want to contact your board directly. And that sounds like a meeting in which that, you know, obviously that concern should definitely be brought up to planning, should this go forward. And obviously also, you know, if he's going to be meeting with the board to discuss issues or concerns, I would definitely attend that meeting and have that discussion as well. I'm sure he'll be able to address that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak against? Come on down. Come on down. Just have a seat and Mike's right there.
I was just gonna say, is there gonna be a meeting for
Actually,
Eastridge?
It's this way.
Because we're like butters to them.
I
We're not
don't,
across the street.
that would be between
Oh.
them and the Eastridge, that wouldn't be
Oh, would-
between
okay.
us. The board of, or where she lived, approached him. If Eastridge decides they would like to meet with him, it sounds like he's very
Okay.
open to it.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect the zoning. I would recommend that if you would like that, to go to your board at Eastridge and have them
Yeah, 'cause we're right-
talk directly
yeah,
to
we're
them.
right
I'm sure
there.
they can set something up.
Yeah, okay, cool.
All right?
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thanks for letting me continue here.
Sure.
We're talking about the numbers.
Yes.
But more than the numbers, we've got these 5 points. So I'm going to try to be pertinent and address the 5 points. But, so we're talking about the difference between 50 and 40 units. with
It'll be
regard-
just 40 units. Just 40
40,
units.
15 to 40. Right.
40.
Okay.
40.
15 is what is permitted by the
Right, permitted.
underlying zoning today.
It'll be 40
Okay,
is what's
so
going to be.
it's 40. The reason, okay, I understand. The reason I mentioned the 15 is without the variance, with, I believe, if I've got it right, with what was agreed on, what passed or voted on earlier, without this variance, they could do 15. Is that about right?
Unless they go through the planned unit development process.
Unless they go that other route. Okay.
But under the basic zoning of C2, you are allowed 1 unit per 40,000 square feet, which would allow 15 on the property today.
Okay, so where we are today with the situation now, we're talking about 40. Without the variance, they could do 15. Okay. So that's what all this is regarding. What happens when you add this number? And I would maintain it's contrary to the public interest for reasons I mentioned earlier, but I think I should mention them again for this point, is that I believe this area behind the shopping center will tend to become a hangout, possibly a magnet for teenage crime. I don't think, I'm not just, saying this, I think that's where, kids would like to hang out. And
So let me,
I'm
because I
repeating-
thought about that after you mentioned the first time. First of all, I'm going to adjust this quickly because this is really not, well, I'll adjust it because it's zoning. It could be that way now. Think about it. If you have an apartment place back there, you're going to have more lighting, you're going to have more people. You're also going to have more police presence because the police have to patrol the area. Right now, you have nothing. You have woods, and you have a back of a shopping area that may be lit, but it's not going to be as well lit as that road. And I got to imagine that, and I don't know because again, this is planning, but I got to imagine that road is also going to be illuminated because you're driving back up that way. So you're going to actually have more illumination back there. So I don't want to go in a tit for tat argument about it, but one could argue that it actually there'll be more attention in that area from a lighting and people and cars and police.
Possibly, sure. We're talking about an additional 25 years of rental apartments, most likely, it sounds like that. Okay, I've talked about that. the spirit of the ordinance. Well, you know, from a common sense point of view, which isn't always the legal sense of point of view, the zoning says 15 units. And the spirit of the ordinance is it's a certain kind of neighborhood. When the zoning was passed, it's a certain kind of area, certain kind of neighborhood, certain kind of density. All the thought and deliberation that went into zoning was for that reason. So this is, I mean, I would say this is against the spirit of that, because you're having a higher density, a significantly higher density, more than double. That's not the spirit. I mean, I hear things earlier today, other cases where people want variances, and you go, oh, the spirit, yeah, you want to do this and that. This doesn't match to me. Substantial justice is done, and I heard the specific phrase reasonable use, that you want to allow reasonable use. Well, well, I would think that 15 is a reasonable use. Profit can be made, it's residential, people can live there and go to the shopping center, so I think we're talking about the numbers here. We're not talking about the 400, and we're not talking about a comparison or threat of using it for other commercial uses. That's a different question. I'm asking the board, if I can, to not take into account the comparative use. I think it's these criteria that's important, and we shouldn't, I would think we shouldn't be comparing it to things that aren't relevant to that. That's it, I'm done.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you touched on the lighting issue and you know, that point he was making, and I don't think that there's any more that I needed to add on that. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Tim, is there anything you'd like to add?
I just will reiterate that, yes, the underlying zoning only allows 15, but if this variance is denied, this applicant will still move forward and put 40 units out there utilizing the PUD process, and by doing so will be hamstringing himself in his commercial part of the development. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Lenny, you've been quiet all night. You're going to stay quiet, aren't you? Ben?
No, the issues I have of interest are going to be addressed through the planning process, and I'm comfortable with that.
Drew? Rob? Yeah. There's no other comments. Can I have a motion, please?
I propose that Apple Development Limited Partnership be granted variance under Section 3.02 of the zoning ordinance to permit a density of 40 multifamily residential units in the C2 General Commercial District, whereas 1 per 40,000 square feet is allowed. The parcel is located at 360 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial Aquifer Conservation Planned Residential Overlay and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, Tax Map 4D3, Lot 001, Case 2019-26, and the petitioner shall obtain special exception for the proposed residential use. We just
You
did
could
that.
actually remove that because that has already been granted.
Okay,
So
that's all I
that- That prerequisite is done.
Okay.
The number 2 still applies, however.
Okay. The petitioner shall obtain site plan approval from the planning board for the proposed apartment building.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ben. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstained? 500. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so next item is, well, actually, I lost my whole attendance. Anything from community development?
No.
Okay. Don't we have a,
Annual meetings next month.
what's the, what?
Next month. Next month will be your annual meeting.
Yeah, I need to get that report, I think, from Robert.
Is that the 28th?
This is the annual meeting where you elect chair and.
Oh, yeah.
that-
No,
and
I have my
review-
planning
yeah.
board meeting as well.
Or your
And that, I
council-
mean, my council meeting
Okay.
as well, next one. Okay, and no other.
I have nothing else relevant to the board, no.
All right. And I do want to say real quickly, thank you, Zina. This is our last ZBA meeting. She's been here since I've been here, so that's a long time.
16 years.
So, thank you very much. We wish you the best of luck on your next, yeah, definitely excellent. Wish you the best of luck on your next adventure, and you are going to be missed. Thank you for all the corrections throughout the years. She always gives me footnotes after my meeting, so. We have approval of the minutes, June 26, 2019. Do I have an approval? Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstain? So, 302. All right, unless there's anything else. Motion, you got a motion? Motion to adjourn, and a seconded, all in favor? Aye. Motion adjourned by Drew, seconded by Rod. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, thank you.